Hey guys, Shay Baker here. Episode 8 of Predicting Patterns. This week we're going to be talking about the MLF Bass Pro Tour on Chickamauga. This ought to be a good one. A lot of big fish caught up there. You see it all the time. You got to give it to the MLF guys. They really took offense to the More Little Fish acronym, and they've really been hammering on some big fish fisheries. So it's going to be a good one, a fun one to watch. Fish ought to be all over the place in all stages. And I don't know anything about Chick, to be honest with you. So what I've got is a special guest lives up there, and we're going to get Alex Rudd on the line. What's up, Alex?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Good looking beard, man. Really good. I'm working on my starter set. I got about Moses' age to get to you, it looks like. Got a little while to go.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's a good starter kit, though.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, it's coming in. It's just, it was just real pat now. But anyway, so I got the Angler app pulled up off to the side here, and like I said, I don't know anything about this place. I'm going to put you on the spot a lot and try to get you to help me break it down and get an idea. I mean, this time of year, you know what they're going to be doing. I just don't know any of the places they're going to play, and I really don't know. I haven't fished like Gunnersville or Wheeler enough around the spawn to know really how much current plays into the spawn. Like a lot of our fisheries down here don't have a lot of current. I have fished Wheeler and an Everstart before, the coast is now, but right around the spawn, and I was actually catching a lot of fish on bluffs on a football jig, and it seemed like they would go up and spawn and come back out real quick, and you were catching some pre and some post, but they kind of would move vertical to spawn real quick. So I don't know if Chick sets up that way too, but really want to just talk about basically what we think will happen this week and what the guys will see. And I mean, if you look at the weather right out of the gate, see if I can get it pulled up here. The weather is looking like a lot of rain, which they've been getting a lot of it all along the trail this year. I got it pulled up. I think the tournament starts on Sunday, maybe Monday. No, Tuesday. Starts on Tuesday. So Sunday and Monday they practice. 80%, 100% up there. Temps look good. 79, 72, 76. Tuesday, the first day, will be 90% chance of rain. Then Wednesday, 81 for a high and sunny all day. Thursday, a little more rain back, 78 and 63. Thursday and Friday, rain, 40 and 40. So, looks like off and on rain all week, all the way up till the Sunday. It's 50% again. Looks like a great bunch of variables. You know, who knows what's going to happen what day. The way they are predicting the weather down here right now, I don't think they know what's going to happen. It's supposed to be 80% today, and it's beautiful outside. So, what do you think? What would you do if you were going to go out there and try to catch not only numbers but big ones, because you're on that place? So, what do you think is going to be the first thing you look at out there?
Well, it's kind of hard, but it's hard for me because I know exactly what I want to go do, but it's probably not the most. Probably not the best thing to go out and catch, numbers and size, right?
Yeah.
I want to go throw a big swim bait because I just know this time of year that's going to play a huge factor in catching giants, right? But really, truthfully, if you're looking at finding those fish, you want to try to find some schooled up because you're going to have them all over the place and in all stages of the spawn. You're going to have pre-spawners and post-spawners. And so I'm going to go looking for some kind of offshore cover or structure that they can hold to. Especially this time of year, those shell bars play a really, really big factor. And you can find, a shell bar in 4 to 6 foot of water that'll have 50 fish on it, right?
Do they spawn on that too while they're already out there?
I think they do. I really believe they do. I mean, obviously I can't tell you for sure because you can't see those fish. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I do believe that some of those fish that school on those offshore places like that, and when I say offshore, I'm talking very shallow, 5 to 6 foot of water. I believe they'll pull up there. I believe they'll school up, and you'll have some of the bigger ones kind of move off and spawn and kind of dump their eggs, and then they'll move back onto those places before moving back off deep. But if you can find those fish schooled up, I mean, I've had days that I've pulled up and caught 30 to 40 off one spot, and they're all 3 to 5.5, 6 pounders. Yeah, so you can get really, especially in an MLF event where every fish counts, you can get really happy really quick in a situation like that.
Yeah, especially too with that size. I mean, it's not 1 pounders. That's some meat still. So that could be ideal. So that's something to look for. What on the lake? Where would something? So say you're up in Dayton. We talked a little bit a while ago, and we'll bring it up again. Maybe running up to the dam. But if you're in Dayton, you have to run on down pretty far to get to some of those shell bars and that kind of fishing.
Yeah, because a lot of that, like as soon as you come out of Dayton and start heading down the river, you're going to have a lot more bluffy kind of stuff there, which is also a great option this time of year. I mean, you can get on there with a 3XD and, like you say, catch some of those fish that want to move more vertically instead of horizontally, right?
Yeah.
You can hit some of that stuff and find those fish using, rocks and things as current breaks and get happy there quick too. But to really find more of that kind of that shallow stuff, you got to get a little bit farther down the river past the Hiwassee Wildlife Refuge right there. Go on past that and go down more like Main Lake, where you're looking at Sail Creek, Possum Creek, and Grasshopper, where all those creeks kind of converge right there in the middle of the river, what we call mid-lake, is really where you're going to find a lot of those shell bars, a lot of those offshore kind of deals that I like to focus on. And honestly, it's just about covering water. I mean, a lot of the times you can be going, catch a fish here, catch a fish there, and then you'll find that one shell bar that will be holding them. And you can sit and just over and over and over, every single cast, catch one.
So is that along the bank, or is that out here on some of these shallower humps way out off the bank and stuff too?
It just depends. It can be way out off the bank, or it can be right on the bank. I mean, I know some shell bars that come to mind that are, 4 to 10 feet off the front of a dock. You know what I mean? You literally sit next to someone's dock and just cast and catch them. And then there's other ones that you have to put just a little bit more work into and find them using your electronics.
Yeah. 10-4. Well, while we're down lake, do they get in these creeks and spawn pretty good too? I mean, they flood into these creeks?
Yes. So that would be my second option. And I believe that those fish are more residential fish. I believe that those, like Grasshopper and Possum Creek are really good creeks. Grasshopper not as much as Possum and Sail though, because Possum and Sail are very unique in the fact that they're almost like their own lakes. They're so big, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about creeks. When we say the word creek, you think of just a really big pocket, but we're talking about giant pieces of water in there. And those are the kind of creeks that you can go way, way back into. You can find a lot clearer water. You can find big residential fish, and a lot of big residential fish. And so you can get, it's one of those deals that back in there, you're not going to get as many bites as you would in Main Lake, but the bites that you're going to get are going to be really big fish.
Is that like a trap deal where there's hydrilla back there, or just a flat and you throw a trap around? Yeah,
there's that. There's bluff kind of stuff. There's lay downs that you can, buzz a swim jig over or a swim bait. I mean, that's the deal about those big creeks is their own, like I say, they're like their own self-contained lakes. I mean, on the way in, you can hit stuff that's, 30-foot bluffs, or you can get on back and you can find grass flats where you can run a trap over the top of it, or you can go on back a little bit further and you can be, swimming a swim jig over lay downs and watch the bass come out and eat it.
I'm in the mouth of Possum right now, and I see what you're talking about. It's kind of these transition points, and got a bridge right there. So a lot of these places where they'll funnel around through there.
Exactly.
Be good.
And like I say, I believe a lot of those fish are definitely residential. I think that they stay there all year long just because water stays in there even when the water's down.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason for them to leave. They have everything they need. They got deep water, they got shallow water, and they got plenty of food.
Does a chatterbait play as well up there as it does on like Guntersville and some of the other places?
It can. It's strange. Chickamauga is definitely one of those lakes that you can pattern them very well, but the pattern is going to change from day to day. And a lot of it has to do with, how much current's coming through the lake, how much sunlight we've got, how much rain we've got. I mean, a lot of different factors play in. But I've seen days when they'll crush a chatterbait, taking it over the grass, and days when they'll won't touch the chatterbait, but they'll eat a rattle trap. Yeah. And then there's days when they don't want a rattle trap, they want red-eye shad, and they want it the two-tap version. I mean, it's just about you got to have a lot of rods on the deck of the boat this time of year to go down there and catch them.
Yeah, that's the way. It's weird how, Guntersville's the same way, and I fished up there more than, well, like I said, I've never even been on Chickamauga, but I fished up there a decent amount, not enough to know, but I have been out there enough to see where it will be just a different rattle. It'll be the same, a lipless style bait, and just a little different rattle, a little different color, a little something, and you think, you'll fish through an area and think, they just left, there's not a fish here, and that's where the old co-anglers come into play so often, and that they won't have the benefit in the MLF. Nobody does anymore in the top tours, but there was I guess it was an FAW tour, I believe, that I was covering once upon a time on Gunnersville, and co-angler had like 25, 26 pounds in the back of the boat with a red rattle trap, or red lipless, I don't even remember what kind it was, and got his boater in the front of the boat at pro, whatever, had a bite, and he cuts it off, hands it to his pro, and he catches 25 pounds. It's so ignorant, but that's what it is. You know,
I'm telling you, dude, chick will humble you so quick.
Yeah.
There was a meme went around a while back, and it was this giant owl about to just crush this mouse, and it was like, the mouse was everybody's expectation to go to Chickamauga and catch a 40-pound bag and a 10-pounder, and then Chickamauga was the big owl, right? And like, I sent it to everybody I knew because I was like, everybody's like, messaging me, hey, I'm coming down to Chick, da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm just like, come on down. It doesn't mean you're going to catch them. I mean, it's like, it is such a fickle place, but all at the same time, I mean, there will be guys, I promise you, that will struggle to get a bite, and then there will be guys that sack up 75, 80 pounds on the first day. You know what I mean? Yeah. So.
Yeah, Gunners was that way. I hate it. I hate fishing there because it is so darn tough. But there's so many big ones in there. You love it too. But it's a love-hate deal because it's not easy. And everybody, it's like a Mecca or whatever. It's where everybody just has this big pilgrimage and they go to these lakes and these expectations. The first time I went to Gunnersville, it was in like February, and I'm sure they were crushing it. I was young, I was a kid, and I went up there and I zeroed all day. I just went out there with a buddy of mine. We fished all day. We went up there thinking, all right, there's 4-pounders everywhere. It was that year skeet. I think it was the year skeet and Aaron and all of them caught somebody on a square bill. We'd seen that on TV. We're like, we're going. We went up there, and I mean, it was pathetic. We never even got a bite. And I'm thinking, this place sucks. But it's
crazy, man. I mean, like, I tell people all the time, I got a really good buddy named Caleb. Bassquest is his YouTube channel. If anybody watching this wants to check it out. But fished with him a lot over the past couple of years just because I wanted to learn Chickamauga and he knew it really well. You know what I mean? So I wanted to get with somebody that could teach me. And the first 6 times I went fishing with him, we like barely caught. We maybe catch. I think the best bag the first 6 times I went with him was like 13 pounds, right? And it was like the 7th or 8th time we sacked up like 30 pounds in one day. And it was like that one day I was like, oh my God, it's the greatest lake ever. You go back the next day and we zeroed. And I'm like, dude, this place is humbling. So
that's the interesting
awesome
thing
lake though.
With this style tournament. So, and it doesn't matter early on in the first 4 days because you're fishing against your groups, right? So Group A only fish. But it's going to be interesting to see, like, on day 1, given whatever weather, with the weather changing so much, versus day 2's Group A and Group B. And we thought we were going to see it at the last one up in Raleigh because the weather there was a pretty big post front on the first day for the second group, but it actually ended up staying pretty tight. But I wonder if we're going to see how this lake can go from on to off so quickly based on current, based on all the stuff, and we see this huge drop from one group to the other or rise from one group to the other.
I really do. I think that'll definitely be a big factor, and I think I'm really looking forward to this event. Because there's going to be a ton of people watching it, and there'll be a ton of people who get to really understand, like you said, how fast this lake can turn on and off, and how quickly and how important like timing fish. I mean, there will be a timing deal there for sure. There will be a point in the day that those fish start to eat, and that will be the time that you got to catch them, and then it'll just turn off.
The other interesting thing about this deal that with moving to these different lakes and all, they hadn't had to worry about as much. Is fish management and the fact they turn on and off. So, do you gamble and just run through them knowing they might not be biting tomorrow, or do you say, well, maybe I need to like it's going to be because you zero after the whatever it's called, the elimination round, then the knockout round, and then the final day, and they're going to be here the whole time. So, how do you manage fish? And that's something I've asked a few of the guys fishing it, and they don't know. Nobody knows. Because it's never been done before. How do you manage these fish? I mean, you've had FOW tournaments in the past where the final day the weights are zeroed, and some other tournaments too. I don't know if the elites ever did it that way, but they used to zero on the final day. But that's still not even the same because here you basically have to. I don't know. It's going to be weird to see how they manage.
It is, and I think it's going to take somebody. it's going to take somebody being able to like really diversify what they're doing, and like I say, have a lot of rods on the deck of the boat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be willing to go to the very back of a creek and then run all the way back out to Main Lake, or run all the way up in the river and catch them near the dam, and then run all the way back down and find a Main Lake. It's going to be somebody that can be very diverse, that's going to do well in this.
Yeah, you've seen like guys like Tharp and Ish stick to their guns and do really well in some of these earlier tournaments where they just say, I'm going to go, punch or Brett Hite throw a chatterbait all day. And it's going to be interesting to see if a guy can survive this 5 or 6 days of chaos with one of those, because they've done pretty well in some of those earlier tournaments. But this place being, like you're talking about, just on and off, and the fish are all over the place. I mean, you might have a spot where there's a bunch of fish out there, and then the next day they've all moved up to spawn, and then 2 days later they're back out there,
Especially when you said, that's why when you said the water, or one day it was going to be like 80 something. See, we've not had a day that hot yet.
Yeah.
And with that much sun and that much heat, it is going to move some fish up.
Yeah.
And I think, and especially here, and especially in the TVA system on Tennessee River, the fish get in a funk right before they want to spawn, and they'll go lockjaw, man. They just don't want to play. They don't want to do anything, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if we have that 80-degree day, there could be a guy that's crushing them on one of these little offshore shell bars that when that water temperature or that sunlight or something triggers those bass's instincts to move up, they'll just lockjaw and move up and start spawning.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to find them.
And then waiting for that
you
time.
come back the next day and they're crushing it. You know what I mean?
That's what's so frustrating too when you're fishing a timing deal like you're talking about, where you're sitting there and you have that one extra added variable where they just shut down completely on you, and the timing doesn't even work because they've just vacated or shut down. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. So who can you think of? One of the things we like to do is try to predict a base weight for the leader, and again, that's so hard to hit because once a guy gets to a certain point, he's at the top of the leaderboard, he backs off. So we try to guess a leading weight for each group, and then also kind of pick an angler or two that you think might do really well in this.
Okay. I think it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say. If we were watching it live, I'd go, okay, this is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna side with it's Chickamauga. There's giants in there. Someone is going to catch a 10 or a couple of 10-pounders.
Yeah. And
it's going to take the upper 60s, probably almost into the 70s, to make the cuts.
Yeah.
Final day, I mean, I'm going to say it's going to be 40 to 50. You know what I mean? Because those fish will definitely start to get funky. Because not only do you got an MLF going on, but you will have other tournaments.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of tournaments that go on down there, especially as we move into the weekend. Saturday, Sunday, you'll have clubs. You'll have you'll have 350, 500 boats on that lake on Saturday, Sunday, right?
Right.
And so those days, I'm going to say the weights are going to be a lot farther down. But guys that I think are going to do well, I definitely know the local guys are going to do well. I mean, like Wesley Strader, Ott, those dudes have spent a lot of time on that lake. Andy Morgan, they've spent a lot of time there. They know some stuff. I think they're going to do well. But this lake also sets up for power fishermen. So KVD, anybody that's willing to go out there and just pound the banks and cover a ton of water is going to do really, really well. And then anybody that can kind of figure out the dam deal. If they can figure out the current and they can figure out that those fish are up there, which will not surprise me if they don't, I think we'll do really well too, because there are a lot of untouched fish the farther you get up towards the dams. So
one guy I'd bring up for that is, and I don't know how much experience, probably don't have much experience at all at Chick, but Dustin Camila is from down here around my house, and he's made a lot of money on local tournaments. He's won an open, he'll go run to whatever dam he's got available and fish and catch them. He's one of the best I've ever seen at fishing. I fished with him a couple times myself, but reading current and fishing current, like heavy dam, right under the generator current, if he gets up there, and I know he'll go look, because it's just, I mean, it's, if he's got something blocking him from the next lake, he's headed that way, trimmed up, And so that'd be interesting to see, because, I mean, like I said, I don't know how much those fish are even affected by sunlight and time of year and everything. It's like there's such a steady supply of that water and the current and everything. I don't know how much they even worry about the spawn until it probably gets a little hotter.
Yeah, and see, man, they don't really worry about anything other than that current.
Yeah.
I mean, that current is really the driving force, but even then, I was actually looking at the TVA discharge schedule, which can be variable, especially with Watts Bar and Chickamauga. It's looking like right now they got about 11,000 units of water coming out, which is not that much. They're going to drop it down to 6 going into this weekend, but with this rain coming, that means they're going to start to ramp it back up, right? And so if they can get that water discharge rate around 65 to 70,000, not only will it help the main lake bite, but there will be a very, very good possibility that if someone can go up there to that dam and figure that out, that they'll be able to get a lot of those bigger fish that move up, because a lot of those fish, that water is just inherently colder because it's coming out of the bottom of a lake, and so a lot of them are pre-spawn, and a lot of them just care about that current. If that current's ripping, they're going to position and they're going to feed and feed and feed and feed. So, is
it mainly a swim bait deal up there, like drifting swim baits or tubes, or what's?
Swim baits. I mean, dude, really, it's swim baits and crankbaits are going to be your two best friends, right? Swimming a swim bait, taking it off those big boulders up there, and then there's a really good crankbait bite. Kind of on the more steep stuff once you get down away from the discharge a little bit more. So it's a very unique dam in the fact that it's big, but it's not giant. Like, when a lot of people think dam discharges are thinking Pickwick, Wilson, these giant dams. That dam is actually pretty narrow, and it actually funnels a lot of current in there. Yeah. And so those fish really, really have to use what they have there to get out of the current just to survive pretty much.
So there's even more of a sweet spot scenario. Like on some of those other dams you talk about, I mean, you can have guys scattered out a pretty good little area, but here, I mean, if it's such a condensed deal, there's not going to be a lot of room up there. How many you fished up there? I'm sure a few times in terms of stuff. How bad does it get up there? I mean, is it?
It just depends, really. I mean, it depends if everyone's heard they're eating or not. You know what I mean? Like if they're eating. Oh God, here we go. Everybody's running towards the dam. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if you get 5 boats up there, that's a lot of boats. Crowded. Like you're going to be casting over each other. It's not even worth being up there at that point. Yeah. But I mean, it can get pretty hairy. But knowing where a lot of those fish position, how they position, how to read those current seams, knowing certain kind of hotspot areas, knowing some more offshore kind of deals where there's maybe a big boulder offshore is really, really key. And even if there are a lot of guys up there, if you know what you're looking for, you can catch when someone else won't. You know what I mean? So,
how deep is that stuff as far as the graphing around and finding those boulders? Is it 5 or 6 foot, or is it a little bit deeper where you can see?
Up towards the discharge more, you get pretty shallow. But like most of what I like to fish, I mean, you're sitting in 15 to 20 foot of water, casting up into 3 to 4 that drops off at about a 45-degree angle into what you're sitting on. And there's just a lot of big boulders that kind of just are on that stuff. So,
what about this Hiawassee? Let's look at it for a second and see. You ever fishing there much?
I don't, because it's so shallow. It's a very shallow creek arm that runs up in there. The Hiawassee is very muddy. There's a lot of big fish in there, though. I mean, I know a lot of guys that fish up in there. I just don't have a ton of experience because I've always been kind of scared of it. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Is it a hydrilla deal too, or a milfoil or something? Pretty good bit of vegetation.
Yeah, some kind of aquatic. I mean, we got a lot of mixing grass too. I think that'll be a big key deal. Is we've got a lot of emergent grass that's definitely going to start coming up because it's starting to warm up. But we've got hydrilla and milfoil. When you can find the hydrilla and the milfoil that kind of mix together, and you kind of get that kind of weird deal that goes on there, and then you find the golden shiners and the gizzard shad in those areas too, there's a lot of big fish going to be in that area.
So we're talking about a lot of these creeks and stuff, like the Hiawassee River there, and then Possum Creek, and they're so big that they don't have a lot of fish coming and going in them. So do you think the mouths and the kind of the transition deals aren't as big of a deal on this particular fishery? Because they kind of stay in there all the time?
It's definitely not like a Gunnersville in that sense. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to have a dude that sits on a bridge and just hammers them, right? I think that there are a couple few key big fish that'll be on those areas.
Yeah.
And what I've found is like if you catch a big one, and when I say like a big, 6, 7+ pounds, it's like it is the dominant fish in that area, right? And like the other fish don't want to get around it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm, like when I say I'm finding schooling fish, all the fish you find in a school will be relatively the same size. But you'll find one rogue big one by itself.
Yeah.
And that's like the guys who catch the 10s are going to be the ones that are covering a lot of water and they come across a big one.
Yeah, that's one of the things too about like Guntersville that's so frustrating. You see these wakes and you think, well, guys catching 25, 30 pounds, they probably go through 150 fish a day to do that. And I'd go up there and I'd fish around. I wouldn't get bit, or I'd get 2 or 3 bites here and there. And I'm thinking I'm not anywhere near what I need to be on to where I can cull up. I had one tournament down there where I had 26 something in the Everstart on day one, and I had 5 bites all day. I got 5 because I was fishing for big fish and they were loners like you're talking about. I pulled up on a point that morning and caught 2 6s, and at 10 o'clock I caught like a 2-pounder, and then I caught a 6 in the back of a creek and then a 6 on another bluff. And it was 24 pounds with 3 fish and a 2-pounder. With 4 fish and a 2-pounder. So that's interesting. That's kind of what you're talking about. You could target, specifically, intentionally target big fish on check the same way, and you won't go through a bunch of numbers. So, but like I said, that's kind of probably what you're talking about with your glide bait, which we did an article the other day for all y'all. We're going to have an article up on Angler before too long with Alex on the glide bait and throwing a big swim bait. That's kind of, you're targeting just a few big fish that way, right? Like loners and...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're targeting the biggest fish in an area, right? And like when you get that big fish to bite, that's her, and you go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I would be interested to see. Obviously, like there aren't a bunch of big bait guys that are in the field. Brandon Polinick will definitely throw a big bait. I know he will.
What about Skeet? Skeet too. He did good on Guntersville a few years ago, throwing that big paddle tail.
Yeah, and I think Skeet will throw one. Brent Ayler will throw one for sure. He's kind of throws those big baits. But like just from the track record over the past few weeks of, Carl Jockinson has spent a lot of time down on Chick over the past couple of weeks and been catching a lot of giant fish on a glide bait. Yeah. So I'm going to be very interested to see if any of those guys will be willing to kind of, swing for the fences and live and die. Because if they get 7 bites all day long and they're all 8-pounders or better, you know what I mean? You're right up there with everybody else that's been planking away at them.
Yep.
It's been very interesting to see.
That's the same thing we were talking about too at the beginning, like an ish in the other situations where he's been punching and just stuck with it. Be a different tactic, but it'll be interesting to see if you got a guy who tried it. And I think it all comes down to that freaking score tracker. It's all well and good to go out there and say, I'm going to lay with this sun gun all day. And it's different when it's, a regular tournament. But now having that sun gun going off in the background every time somebody catches one and you're sitting there and you've been laying with it, you got one 8-pound bite at like 8:30 and it's 10 o'clock and you're like,
yeah. Yeah. See, and I say all the time, like, it is easy for me to stick a big bait in my hand and go to work with it because I know what I'm looking for, but there's no pressure on me, right? I'm not fishing for $100,000. I'm fishing for the tank of gas that I got, right? Like, I don't care. I don't got nothing in it. So I can go toss this thing all day long. But, dude, that score tracker, it stresses me out. I'm not even fishing, and it stresses me out. So I know that it gets at those guys.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting. So, let's see. We talked about some of the creeks, talked about the main lake, Hiawassee and the dam. Is there anything else you got in mind for this one?
Man, really, I think it's just the deal. I think, there's a lot of factors that are going to play in, weather, everything's going to play in, but really, man, I think we've kind of covered all the bases. There's definitely a bite farther on down the lake, as you get down near the nuclear plant, as you get down towards, Harrison Bay and all those places. There's a lot of good stuff down there to fish. There's a lot of grass, a lot of things like that.
Is there a
lot of those guys have fished that lake before, so they'll know where some of that stuff's at.
Yeah.
So.
Is there a lot of riprap? Is there a pretty good riprap bite like there is on Guntersville?
No, not really, man. You can get on it, but like I say, a lot of those kind of funneled areas, they just don't really care about it because they've got what they need once you get past those bridges. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very expansive. I can't explain it to you until you see it, man. Some of those creeks are huge.
Yeah.
I mean, they're massive. You pull back in there and it just opens up to a whole nother lake. So,
what about marinas? You think they'll play at all this time of year?
I think they can for sure. Again, a lot of residential fish in there, a lot of big residential fish. I think you have a lot of dominant fish in those areas. I think definitely that if you're looking for one big bite, or if you're looking to kind of, maybe someone's been pounding on a bunch of little ones all day long, and they finally say, okay, I'm going to go see if I can catch one big one, right, to bump myself up the score tracker here. I think a marina could definitely play in there.
I got a satellite image in Harrison Bay pulled up, and it's as you zoom in the Angler app, you can see where it's probably taken in the summer and everything's topped out. Is in the back of every one of these pockets, can you get on that deal like a trap bite where this stuff's coming up off the bottom and it's just getting started good? I mean, is that?
It just depends where the water level's at. They've been kind of fluctuating Chickamauga quite a bit. They dropped it down way low a few weeks ago, and I think now they're starting to kind of raise it, tick it back up. But if that water's come up and it's kind of stayed there for a little while, that grass will start to grow and start to get emergent.
Yeah.
But a lot of that stuff, man, is super shallow. I mean, that's what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of Chickamauga, as soon as you get outside of the buoys, you go from 35 feet to 2 feet, like that. And so that's, again, why it's kind of hard to pinpoint fish, is because there is so much shallow grass for them to get in.
Yeah.
I mean, freaking, you can go 100 miles and there's grass flats just everywhere, right? And so I think a lot of that will play in if the water level is where it needs to be.
Do they get dirt shallow like they do on Gunnersville? Like you can throw a rattle trap in 4 inches of water and get a bite from a big one?
Yeah.
That's
like
so
you can
crazy.
see them swirl on it. Like I'm surprised. I've caught fish so shallow that I don't know how I didn't see them swimming around.
Yeah. It's bizarre. Like Mud Creek's like that way up the river on a lot of places on Gunnersville, but I've never liked that or understood it because I can't confidently get up there where I take my trolling motor, jack it all the way up, put a measuring board underneath it where it'll stay up out of the bracket, and I'm still chunking a trap and they're still biting it, way up in there. It's just so hard. And there'll be 45 boats, and you're like, there's no way these fish are not going to run out, and bam, you catch one. So,
I mean, I've seen guys push pole back into, little pockets and things before this time of year, and I'm thinking that guy's nuts. And first cast, you catch a 7 pounder, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess that guy wasn't that nuts. You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy, man.
All right, Alex. Well, I appreciate it, bud. That was a good time. I think we gave him a pretty good little bit of stuff to look at, and we'll see how close we were and how close we weren't. I guess Jacob Wheeler will be one we got to really look for on this one too, being he's moved down there and he's on a little bit of a
spent a lot of time on Chick, man. I've seen him a lot. Yeah. Let's just say that.
He's been on a pretty good tear lately, and he won. That's where he won the Bass Fest a few years ago too, wasn't it?
Yep.
Before he made the elites. All right, bro. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next time. We'll sign off and enjoyed it. Check it out. Predicting Patterns. Got some old episodes up, and check out my boy Alex. YouTube, Instagram, and even Facebook now.
Yeah, I got fancy and got a Facebook.
You got a Facebook. You're Facebook official.
I am.
All right, bro. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.